Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is Monday at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. So that means it's content chat time. And since it's December, I always like to have something that's going to help you look forward to the new year and have some plans in place that you can hit the ground running on. And so, with that in mind, I had to have Christopher Penn, who you may know on various platforms as CS Penn, who is pretty much the smartest person I know when it comes to AI for marketers and figuring out how to not be a dummy when using it. So I'm so psyched that you are here and joining us today to kind of both unpack everything that's happened over the past uh, 12 months ish. And to kind of give us your insights into where you think things are headed. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start with the obvious, which is when you were, this time last year, what did you think was going to be happening with AI and that you were going to be talking to marketers about this year that didn't necessarily end up being the case?
At this time last year, there was this brand new service that was making a big splash on Reddit and a few other places, and a lot of us had jumped in on it to try it. It's called Chat GPT that used the GPT 3.5 model, and it was pretty good. It was pretty good. Previously, I had been using OpenAI's platform, the Playground, which allowed you to use the GPT 3.5 or the 3.0 models to do text generation, and that was also pretty good. But ChatGPT was different because it all the traditional settings that we were used to for controlling the way the models behave were gone. It was just a chat bot. Like, that's weird. But it was reasonably capable. It's based off of a model called Instruct GPT, actually, which is how OpenAI has managed to create this sort of tuning mechanism to make it behave like a chatbot. And so that was really, really interesting. Then earlier in the year, you had the release of Stable Diffusion, which was a huge deal for the image generation community because up until that point, a lot of the models had been closed. So Dolly, for example, was a closed model where you could do stuff with it, but you had to pay after a certain amount of time or a certain number of generations. And there were a whole bunch of restrictions, things you weren't allowed to do. And suddenly Stable Diffusion can't come out in, I think it was April of 22. And it's like, hey, you can just download this and run it on your laptop and you can crank out, 1,600 images at a time if you wanted to. So 2022 really was a big year for the democratization and the commoditization of generative AI. And then you really started to hear more people adopting it in January once people came back from the holidays and things. But for a lot of the nerds, December was a month where we're all like, this chat GPT thing looks like it's gonna be a thing.
Definitely. I mean, it's the kind of thing that it came up at holiday gatherings, even if you had family members who weren't that tech savvy, because there was just such the flood of
Hmm.
conversation about it. And of course, the hysteria, Chat GPT is going to take my writer job, which is always my favorite because I don't know about you, but I can tell very, very quickly when something is, a feature article that's been generated entirely by GPT, usually by the um, weird adjective and adverb choice that you're just like, what human being would ever put all of this together in one sentence?
The OpenAI models definitely have a very specific style of writing, and if you don't have very strong prompting, you can tell they sound like themselves. However, there are probably over 10,000 different models that exist now, and some of them sound really good. There's one model I've been using as an open source model called Netty that if you when you read its output, it takes a little bit less to condition it than the Chat GPT model, the OpenAI models. When you read its writing, particularly when you read its fiction writing, it's really good. It sounds like a person.
That is so creepy, and I'm totally going to check it out after our conversation today. I love it. Personally, I like the idea of being able to train your AI in order to be that kind of shepherd of the brand voice. Because I think in bigger companies in particular, you end up in that situation where your content team and your marketing team have invested all of this time in creating a really, specific brand and having, sometimes a little bit of aspirational kind of brand voice going on. that just gets completely blown out of the water by all of the customer service interactions people have that seem like they came from a completely different company. So
Hmm.
I think that's one of the things too, is that a lot of marketers maybe aren't thinking about how, yeah, content creation is certainly something you can be doing, but it's really that shepherding and keeping things on brand that is such a huge opportunity. And you look like you were searching for a
I was
resource.
looking for a cookbook because I got to get a cookbook in here. Here's the funny thing: the more the time goes on, believe it or not, the worse ChatGPT's writing gets, and here's why. It's because it's getting increasingly censored. It's getting increasingly say like you can't say this, you can't say these things like that. And here's the funny thing about the way language models work. Underneath the hood, they're just big libraries of probability, right? The analogy I often give is if a piece of text was a pizza, then a language model would be your cookbook of notes on all the pizzas in the world you've ever eaten. And these companies got make these gigantic cookbooks. And when you censor things in language model, it causes damage to the whole model. So here's how that works. Imagine you have a big cookbook and there's all these recipes in it, and then you're like, oh, but I'm allergic to wheat. Okay, you can't just go through the cookbook and cross out the word wheat. You have to tear out recipes like this has wheat in it. This has wheat in it. And so
Really, you have
yeah,
to
okay,
find and replace.
right. So you rip out the page that has bread and pasta, and that's great. But then you're like, oh, well, beef Wellington, well, that's got to go. Even though the majority of the dish is not wheat, right? And half of the sauces we make use wheat as a thickener. Okay, those got to go. And so you're ripping out pages and pages of this cookbook, and what's left is a pale shadow because that one word, that one concept, is in so many other things.
Yep.
When you censor language models and try to take out things like profanity, undesirable or controversial points of view, like you can't talk to ChatGPT about politics. When you start ripping pages out, it causes damage to everything else, and as a result, it can't construct language as well. It's one of the reasons why you're seeing a big movement now in the language model community to create what are called adversarial model systems. Meta just released theirs called Llama Guard, and so the idea is you have an uncensored model that can say some really bad things, right? But it also is very creative, has full language capability. So that's your base. Your base starting point. And there's a second model that basically supervises and says, it looks for, is that racist? Is that sexist? Is that, this, that? And if it says that, then it points back to the original and says, try again. So instead of trying to censor the model itself, you're now saying, let's create a behavioral system in place where we define the behaviors we don't want, and then a second language model looks for that language. And if it sees it, tells the first model, hey, knock it off, try again.
I like that, especially having that come from Meta, because so many people have inadvertently ended up with, short-term bans because of typing something that, triggered one of the AIs to say, hey, you're a terrible human being trying to subvert something and has banned people for things that it shouldn't. So I love the
Hmm.
idea that they're the ones working on that because they do need to get better at that, especially when they do things like do those kinds of little bans on people who are paying them advertising dollars who then can't log in and approve their ad campaigns. So they lose money if they can't
Yeah.
figure out how to make the AI smarter.
Meta is an interesting case because, and this is something I think has been really helpful and informative. Um, on Threads just released tags, which is their version of hashtags, and there's tech threads. And what's really interesting is now a lot of Meta employees have joined, the tech threads tag, and you're starting to see more and more of the people doing the actual work. Because let's be completely honest, Mark Zuckerberg should not be talking to the public about anything. It's like watching a space alien. Like, greetings, fellow humans. Like, I don't know. If you get the people doing the real work talking about what they're working on, which is happening on Threads, you go, oh, I understand why this is so difficult for you now. So there's one person, Edward, who's talking about how difficult moderation is, because moderation is wildly variable. So we're just going to lightly dip our toes in the very dangerous waters here. Let's say you have two people of opposite ends of the political spectrum, and they're adamant in their points of view. They are right, the other person is wrong.
Sounds like
When you
Facebook.
look
Okay.
when you look at content moderation tools, what are they doing? They're marking the other person's stuff as offensive, like, oh, that's this, that's no good, that's evil or whatever. And the AI is like, what exactly am I supposed to do with this? Because you have two people who are firmly convinced they are right and the other person is morally wrong, and everything that
Yep.
person says is offensive, and the AI is like,
Like, so
and so
everything's offensive. Okay.
exactly. So everything is offensive to somebody. And so Meta's line in the sand has been the physical violence. Like that's their line. They say anything up to inciting physical violence is okay. Inciting physical violence after that, that's not okay. And so that's one of the reasons why you can get toxic language to some degree on any social platform. But that's how Meta makes that decision. Now contrast that with X, where it's like, say whatever you want, it's like, okay. And so this is what it looks like
Unless it's
with
about the
no
supreme
moderation.
overlord, and in which case you get banned.
Exactly. But that's what it looks like when there's no moderation at all, right? You just turn off the moderation controls. You're like, wow, look at that. That is not just a sewer, that's sewer on fire with razor blades.
It reminds me of some gaming forums I've been a part of over the years, for real.
Even those are more moderated than X nowadays. I mean, it's pretty astonishing. But when we think about how these AI systems have to accommodate for so many diverse points of view, including a whole bunch we don't agree with, it's like, okay, I can understand then why this is such an intractable problem to solve.
Exactly, because you don't want to end up in a situation where everyone has to just join whichever social media networks align with their political viewpoints. Because, of course, at a certain point, how much can you niche down? Because people have so many different things they have opinions on, which could, of course, inevitably conflict with each other. I just don't think that we could ever, people couldn't find a network that they agreed with everything on. So that would be pretty miserable
That's
to try.
happening though. That's happening, particularly with Discord. Discord now has 1 billion users a month. It is one of the largest social networks, but within Discord, are obviously hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of individual small communities. And
Yep.
what you're getting there is exactly that. You're getting lots of little bubbles where in this bubble, these things are the rules. This is the culture of this bubble. And if you don't like it, go make your own. But also, in this bubble, you never have to hear anything you disagree with and stuff. And people like that more. It's one of the reasons why Discord has a billion users now, because people feel better about that than being on Facebook, where crazy drunk Uncle Fred is yelling about some, the ruining Thanksgiving again, Fred. Thanks. Um, and so for content marketers, when you think about that, then that becomes a huge problem for a couple of reasons. One, there's no town square anymore, right? X kind of was that to some degree, and that's been set on fire. And two, the private social media communities like Discord, like Slack, etc., they're not things you can monitor, right? They're not things you can do analytics on. They're not things you can do very much attribution analysis on. So for content marketers and social media marketers, we're like, so what do we do when the channels exist? People are having conversations about the subject areas that we care about, that we want to influence, and we can't even see them, much less be invited in them to participate in them. And that, kind of what you were starting out with at the top of this, that's one of the big challenges for 24 for marketers. One of the things that you as a marketer absolutely positively need to be double, triple, or quadruple down on is brand. If you are not building a brand, if you're not building something that is memorable, you are hosed. The brand is the only thing that can cross the semi-permeable membranes of all these different communities, because people who like your brand will talk about your brand wherever they are. And so we really have to flip our thinking about content on its head to put handles on content that people can pick it up and take it with them into these other places. So less of here's another 5,000 word blog post on whatever, and more on, hey, here's something useful. I want to share this with my friends.
Totally. And I'm going to share this from our friend Carlos Abler. because I think this is definitely true, is that, with the rise of all these GPTs, with the rise of all this AI content, it means that you need to have human editors who really understand the AI, understand, the ins and outs. And, we also need folks like Ruth Carter to explain to us how not to step in it from a legal standpoint as well, because there's so much going on.
There, there is, and in Carlos's example, I would, if that was something that was going to be mission critical, I would not build that on a public platform, right? I would build that with my own, with an open weights model, something like from the Llama family, on your own hardware, and say, okay, this is going to run, and no one can stop me because it's running on my hardware. It's kind of like the difference between hosting your website on a site like Squarespace, or like putting a server in your office saying our website's going to run here, and unless we fit, unless the FBI shows up in our building to unplug us, no one's taking this thing down. And so that's a big part of how to think about AI too, is you have the sort of the convenient SaaS based models, OpenAI, Microsoft, Google, etc., and all the every cloud vendor's got their AI cloud now. And those are good if you don't want to build infrastructure. But if you are doing something that you need either absolute control over or absolute security over, you are going to be looking at doing it in-house. I was talking to a client last week who invested $500,000 in basically a pile of NVIDIA H1 GPUs, those gigantic graphics cards. And I'm like, that's a lot of money. And they're like, yeah, we're building our own AI systems because we don't trust the big cloud providers to stay operational. And if we're going to put this as part of our secret sauce, we need to know it has, 5.9 availability.
Yeah. And I'm actually working with one of the big um, global providers of all the technology and space for being able to run these apps, because not everybody can actually do that in house. But then you have to find the right provider who has their data centers in the right places and who has those
Mhm.
relationships. And I think that's the real kind of thing that I have not been hearing in these conversations that marketers are having about AI. Everyone just sort of assumes that they can purchase it like you would go and purchase Marketo and that it'll just be available to you, and they're not necessarily understanding the technology infrastructure required to be able to integrate it with everything your company is doing. That it's not just like purchasing Marketo, for example.
It can be, but you have to know the risks that come with it. And, that requires a lot of, honestly, a lot of management consulting, because the technology itself is moving very quickly. So obviously your technology deployment strategy has to be agile, but your people and your processes also need to be that as agile and as adaptable to rapidly changing circumstances. And let's be honest, most companies, agility is only a buzzword around strategic planning, once a year. And otherwise, it's about as agile as one of the Flintstones.
Oh, and I mean, yeah, because for as much as companies say that they want the agility, then there's still 25 people that want to approve every big communication that goes out, including legal and compliance. So there's no agility that you can actually have when so many people want to have their, their hands in it. Which brings up, Carlos kind of gave a follow up, which was asking about, human editors or specialized AI editors. And I think when you start talking about agility, you do need to start thinking about how can you have specialized AI editors, specialized AI like process improvement tools in place, so that way you're not having things be bogged down by a human being who may or may not be available.
Exactly, and that's where this concept of agent networks comes in. I was talking about this past weekend in my own newsletter. A lot of the people who use AI have this very monolithic view of it. There's this thing. There's a Chat GPT and this big monolith in the sky, and you talk to it like some mystical oracle, and that's not how these systems work best. Language models are good at language. They're not good at things that aren't not language, like math. If you've ever said, hey, write a 250-word blog post and you count it, very rarely, if ever, do you actually get 250 words. Sometimes you get 100, sometimes you get 450. You're like, you can't count, clearly. But also, you can get really, really good results through prompting, but the prompting has to be very thorough and very specific and very complete. And a lot of people don't have those skills. Um, for enterprises, for companies, they're better off looking at that ensemble of different tools. So you have a language model. You also have databases of knowledge that the model can pull data from. You have adversarial models fact checking what the main model is doing, saying, "Oh, that's not allowed. You can't do that." And this ecosystem that is created is the better architecture and a better deployment strategy for enterprise ready AI, right? If you want something that will make your lawyers happy, that's the way you've got to go about it. Having this monolithic model and asking it to be the Wizard of Oz and do everything is just not going to go well. Um, Having that ensemble, that's how everything in nature works, right? If you look at any ecosystem, it's the greater than the sum of its parts, not one gigantic thing that tries to be everything.
Well, that kind of brings me to, something I've been thinking about that I'd love your take on, which is it seems like every big platform has kind of come out with some sort of an announcement about their, next generation AI tool that is going to change the way we do everything. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on kind of who surprised you this past year with being somebody who actually had a surprisingly good offer, and maybe who's really kind of lagging behind or doing um, not as well as you would expect considering how much data they have about humans.
In the words of the old Dennis Miller show, who fed it and who ate it this year? Um, this year, the winner, well, there were two winners. Microsoft was one of them. Microsoft came out swinging very hard. They are, I think, the majority investor in OpenAI. They basically provide OpenAI's compute infrastructure, and Satya Nadella pretty much gets what he wants whenever he calls up OpenAI. The fact that Microsoft pivoted so quickly to having the GPT series models in everything, so Microsoft Copilot, Windows Copilot, Office Copilot, and all that stuff, is a testament to the fact that Microsoft's management looked at the landscape and said, okay, we still have Windows, we still have Office, we lost the browser. And this is our chance to take search. Right? This is our chance. Literally have nothing to lose because for the last 20 years, people basically giggle when they say the word Bing and search together, right? And so we're just going to go all in, throw caution to the wind, and we're gonna do an integration with AI, and they did, and it is good enough now that people don't laugh anymore when you say I used Bing to create this thing. Like, oh yeah, use Bing Image Creator, use this, and it's no longer, oh, you were too stupid to use Google. The the second big winner this year was Meta. Meta released two models in the span of a year, Llama and Llama 2, that are best in class open models. And what this means is that if you take a tool like ChatGPT, you can use it, but the underlying model, the GPT-4 model, you can't touch that. You never see it. You never get a chance to interact with it directly. It is always locked away. With Llama 2 in particular, you can go to Hugging Face, for example, and just download a copy. Like here's the gigantic 28 gigabyte file or 7 gigabyte file, and you can have that on your laptop. If you have the right interface software, you can run it on your laptop, and that means that you can modify it, you can tune it, you can specialize it, and if you are running it on your laptop, you can turn off your Wi-Fi, unplug everything, and it still works. Right? It is independent of the internet. So this is true democratization of generative AI because now no one can take that away from you. Yes, tomorrow the FBI or somebody could just go to OpenAI and say, turn your stuff off, and that could happen. You
Yeah.
can't do that when the software has been given away. And it was very, very clever of Meta to give away their model because they basically completely undermined every government in the world and their ability to regulate AI. The moment Llama 2 came out, regulation was out the door because no matter how no matter how much any government or any politician or any political party wants to regulate AI, you can't anymore because it's out there. The technology's out there. And it should be clear. Meta's not the only company that did this. They're just one of the most prominent ones because they are one of like 10 companies have the compute power to build these things in the first place.
Yeah.
In terms of who ate it this year, Google. Google has consistently surprised us all year with how bad they've done. For a company that has the concentration of smart people, right? Smart, capable people. They're, in no way are we saying that the people who work at Google are bad or stupid. They are some of the smartest people in the world. And a company that has all the data. Like they have Chrome, Google Search, Gmail, Android, YouTube, the list goes on. Their footprint is gigantic, and yet they consistently just screwed the pooch. Right, the Palm model was a disaster. Palm 2 was okay. They just released Gemini, which the Gemini Pro version isn't much better than GPT 3.5, and Llama outperforms that. And they got in a whole bunch of marketing hot water by basically faking their demo video, which if you're trying to build
That's so sad.
I know, if you're trying to build trust in AI, that is literally the worst thing you could do. And so they were the ones that consistently surprised everyone. Like, why are you so bad at this? You shouldn't be. You're Google.
I mean, I remember getting the initial invite to the Bard beta and being like, "Am I doing something wrong? Can it really be this terrible?"
Mm-hmm.
It was shockingly awful. It
Yep,
was really
it
sad.
really was, and it still is.
And who would have expected that, this time last year we had Meta talking about how soon in the metaverse you could have legs, something that people who'd played MMOs had had for decades. And so that they pivoted from that to actually beating Google at AI. I don't think anybody anywhere would have predicted that to be where we were today.
No, not at all. I mean, Meta has always had, to its credit, very, very strong research capabilities. I mean, they have been a research lab and of outstanding stature for a decade now. And a lot of the stuff that they do behind the scenes is really incredible. Because again, like all the other big tech companies, there's a bunch of really smart people who live there. Their leader may be kind of a weirdo, but the company is filled with really smart people. And so the fact that what the management team at Meta did was they basically just opened the door and said, "Okay, everybody, come on in and check out what we got going on in the labs." We all went in and like, "Wow, that's pretty good." And they were agile enough to say, "Okay, we're going to build a language model from scratch. We're going to spend a few $100 million building these things, and we're giving them away. Everyone, come get your language model."
Merry Christmas.
Exactly. That's what, and the latest scuttlebutt is that Llama 3 is on the way, and they
Wow.
are aiming to give it away as they have with the first two, and they expect it to have performance comparable to GPT-4, which would be
Wow.
mind-blowing because again, you can take a Llama model today and on a MacBook Pro run it and get good results.
That's pretty spectacular, but you just said the magic words there, on your MacBook, and I'm a Mac girl. I have been, since 2000, me and my laptop. Where's Apple in all of this? How is it possible that we don't have the same level of AI built into our Mac desktops and everything we're doing as the Windows folks? Windows is never ahead on the like user experience front. What's happening here? It's very strange.
It's not strange at all, not if you know Apple. So a few things are happening. One, Apple has released some really good toolkits for developers. MLX is the most recent one that allows people who are building code for Macs to use the full power of the M series chips, which are ridiculously powerful for AI. And pound for pound are actually the best chips to be using for AI because they are incredibly powerful, but they also don't run up your electricity bill like crazy. You can on a MacBook with an M series Max processor, you can do AI, like hardcore computational AI, at roughly the same speed as many NVIDIA graphics cards, but for like half the power or less.
It's
So they're
awesome.
pretty incredible. Yeah, they're pretty incredible. And two, one of the things that people consistently forget about Apple is this: Apple is never first at anything. First, Windows interface, nope, that was Xerox. First use of the mouse, nope, that was Xerox. First MP3 player, not a chance. First tablet, nope. First smartwatch, nope. Apple is never first. What they are is best at user experience. They make
Yep.
things that are low friction. And for language models in particular, there's still a lot of friction. There's still a lot of, if you want to get a model up and running on your own hardware, it is a pain in the butt. The closest tool that is somewhat friendly is a tool called LM Studio. It's free, it's open source, you can download it, and then you got to find a model you want to plug into it. It is not, it is not something that the average Apple user is going to want to do. And two, it doesn't make a lot of sense right now in the Apple experience, because what does it add to the Apple experience? What we are seeing them doing is building new um, add-ons and software to things like Siri, and adding new chipsets. That's one of the reasons why you have things like the Apple Neural Engine within the M series processors, so that they're building the hardware so that they can run models locally in those chipsets. And they're focusing on what they call small language models. We're having, models with 100 billion, or like a billion parameters or less, that are very specialized to basically make Siri smarter, right? So you can say, you can tell Siri to do three things at once, and it'll know what you mean. It's like, oh, you want me to turn off the lights, and you want me to start the song, and you want me to let you know when 25 minutes have passed, instead of having to give three separate commands. That's where Apple sees the opportunity to make people's lives easier, but very selectively. And I think for the kind of company they are, it makes sense.
And I'll add that, I've definitely seen over the years their visual recognition, like the photo recognition kind of stuff that they're doing. When you have decades of images, they've gotten really good about understanding what they're looking at and
Hmm.
grouping things together. Because I'm somebody who takes a million and one photos whenever I'm at a conference or event, or of my adorable animals, or the gluten-free treats that I'm figuring out how to bake, because I didn't rip all of the things out. I just wrote out the weight. Um, it's interesting to me that they focused on that, because that is the quality of life. That is the,
Right.
how what's gonna make me happy as an Apple user, having me be able to say, "Can you find all the pictures of my cat, Baron von Smooshikins?" That is gonna make me happy, that it knows who he is and can deliver up all of that without me having to look at 25,000 recent photos, which nobody wants to do. So I
Exactly.
agree with you.
If you go into the Photos app on your iPhone, and you take a picture of, say, a slide from a presentation at a conference, you long press on that, you can select the text in, because Apple's visual recognition recognizes any text within any photo now. It's one of those things, like, they don't make a big deal about it, but you're like, oh, I was just at this conference talk and I wanted to, take some notes. Great. Now I just press and hold on the slides and I copy paste. And now I've got whatever was on the slides, I've now got available to me. That's Apple's approach. Are they going to release a Transformers model? Probably not. Right? Why would they? Why would you
Yeah.
need to, when there's so many ones that you can already choose from that are best in class? What they will probably do is they'll take existing models, customize them, and bake them down into the operating systems, and then again, very narrow use cases, but ones that will deliver quality of life.
So when you're thinking about the conversations you've had at all of these events, and I've personally seen you at a few of them over the past year, talking about marketers and kind of low hanging fruit. What do you feel like, for folks who have this is their slow time, maybe at the end of the year, and they're looking towards next year? What should marketers actually, what should they be looking into? Like, what is a good low hanging fruit, easy first AI project to be considering?
You know, the thing is this, it's all about practice. It's all about time in the system. It's about learning how to use the systems better. So there is no substitute for logging into the tool of your choice and just trying to make it work. Try to figure out what makes it work better and what doesn't. Shameless, absolutely shameless plug. I've got a new course coming out on Wednesday that is generative AI for marketers, and people can take that. There's a whole huge section on prompt engineering, but I would strongly suggest that you spend some time with these tools and say, okay, well, what tasks do I do now that are language based, that are repetitive, that maybe aren't great value, and can I do that task with a machine? Easy one for marketers: reporting. right? Reporting is a task that a lot of people don't love. A
Yep.
lot of people have varying levels of skill at, um, and are being asked to do on a regular and frequent basis, and could do it better with the help of generative AI. So, a tool like ChatGPT's advanced data analysis engine would be a great place to start. Say, okay, well, I've got this data from my Marketo instance or my Salesforce instance or whatever. Language model. What do you see here? Here's what I'm trying to figure out. I want to know attribution analysis. I want to know what channels are working. I want to know what campaigns are working. Here's my data. What do you see? What's working? Um, and that would be a really good use case for someone to say, okay, at the end of the year, I want to get better at these tools. Pick the tasks you don't like doing and figure out how to get a machine to do as much of that task as you can.
100%, and it's funny you mentioned that because I'm working on proprietary research for a client right now. And the part that I really dislike is looking at all the numbers and trying to find, what are those weird pieces of overlap? Because I don't want to sit and do pivot tables or to try to remember how to do all the Excel formulas. And now you don't have to. You can actually have the language model tell you what the formulas are or to give you that visual basic stuff that you just plug in. And I think it was actually one of your sessions where you showed how to do that. And it was like amazing. So I had somebody helping me from the client side with this. And she said, "Oh gosh, I'll see. I'm not an Excel whiz." And I said, "Oh, you do not need to be." And I sent over a
Mhm.
link to an article about it. And what did I get back in like less than 24 hours from her? I got back 16 slides of amazing correlations with all the things that off the top of my head I wanted to know that neither of us would have wanted to have spent the whole weekend actually doing. Instead, she was able to, put the data in, spend a little bit of time, and create really cool, infographics. Which I mean, hello, that's what we'd all rather be doing, right?
Exactly. One of the things I say in my keynotes about this is that skill is no longer a differentiator, right? If you have access to these tools and you become fluent in these tools, your individual skills are no longer a differentiator of your quality as an employee. What differentiates you is two things. One, the quality of the data you have access to, and two, the quality and quantity of ideas that you have. Because if you've got an idea, you can use these tools to bring it to life. If you're one of those people who's like, oh, I would love to write a book, but I just don't have the time, or I'm not a very good writer with fiction, things like that. Great. You can have the machines outline it, and you can have machines do the first draft, and maybe even do the second and third draft, do editing and stuff like that, and produce that book. You may say, "Oh, I've had this idea for a song, but I can't play any instruments." Great, not a problem. Again, you have the idea. As long as you can put it into words and describe it, a machine can help you get 80 to 90 to 95% of the way there. And what people, it's interesting. There's for the people who are rabidly anti AI, it is not a binary situation where it is, these machines have to be perfect, or it's not as good as a human. The reality is there are a lot of people who create a lot of crap, right? Especially in marketing. There's a lot of crap marketing content where guess what? That stock
True.
chat GPT, bland in conclusion, language is still better than what's on people's corporate blogs anyway. Right. So
Sad and true.
one of the things that came out in July was a study from BCG and Wharton, basically showing, and this was a fascinating takeaway, that from 750 consultants that they tested out, the bottom half performers in terms of quality of work with augmented with AI surpassed the top half of quality performance from the control group with just 5 hours of work within these tools. So it's not a question of, it has to be perfect. Guess what? It just has to be better than what you got now. And in every single task that we do, there is something that you're not good at that a machine can do just a little bit better that ultimately makes you better because it's less time you spend on things you're not good at, and the quality of the work you turn out is better.
Totally. Sometimes you just need that starting point to jump off of, and maybe you don't use anything from that first version, but having it there and you poking at it gets you to think about it differently and gets you started, which is
Mhm.
so helpful. Um, Well, now, of course, I'd love for us to do some prognosticating. So thinking about, where are we going to, what are we going to be talking about this time next year? Which I know is so hard because literally every day this is changing. But what do you think marketers are going to be doing completely differently by this time next year because of AI?
I don't think AI is going to be the problem by this time next year. This time
We're
next
not
year,
talking about that, Chris.
this time next, I mean, the thing is, and this is something that's a valid concern. This time next year, at least in the USA, we'll have just gotten through a presidential election cycle. And whatever the results of that are, it will be the amount of brain space that people have to devote to consuming marketing will be approximately zero, right? It's something we've been telling our clients on the ad front too. Every election cycle, the budgets for ad spend go up and up and up. So if you are thinking about 24 right now and your ad budgets, whatever you've budgeted, it's not enough because you're going to need to spend more. You are going to see absurd use and misuse of AI within the political sphere to create disinformation, misinformation, objectively just flat out wrong stuff, fake stuff, and that will find its way into political advertising, political discourse, and stuff. So there will be some, and there needs to be some strong conversation. The EU just passed its first set of recommendations on regulating AI to deal with misuse, right? So by this time next year, we'll probably be talking about here's all the ways AI was used to abuse and manipulate the election cycle. And we already know that, social media has been doing that for 10 years now. What are we going to do about it? So that there will be, some increased calls for regulation from that because that's just how human beings are. From the technology
Totally.
side, we don't know. You are likely to see you're likely to see another major release of all the big models, right? So you're likely to see another version of the GPT series from OpenAI, whether it's called GPT-5 or not, we don't know. You're likely to see one from Anthropic. You'll probably see one from Google that we'll all laugh at. You will see Llama 3 from Meta. So you'll see the advances in these capabilities. And what you need to know about that is every generation of model is approximately, it's about 6 months. 6 to 9 months is how fast new models come out. Every generation is double the capacity of the previous generation. So it has twice as much working memory as the past. It has twice as much capability. In a lot of cases, it has twice as much data that was trained on. So the next generation of models will double your capabilities. We are seeing right now a lot of interest and a lot of development of multimodal models that can do from one format to another. There's an open source one called Lava that is a combined word and vision model. So you give it an image, it can tell you, you can describe it, or you give it text and it can create imagery. You're going to see more of those multimodal models. That will have profound impacts on things like advertising and creative because now today you have to kind of cobble together a few different tools to do stuff like that. With multimodal models, you'll be able to just tell it, hey, I want to make a 30-second ad spot for this thing, and it will put together some crazy hallucination and some off-key music, and you're like, well, at least I didn't pay for that. But
Well,
that's
going
where
back, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I said that's where things are headed right now. How fast we get there, whether it's within a year's time or 3 months' time, we don't know yet. But multimodality, you're going to see a lot more with agent networks next year. That we're already seeing that now. AutoGen came out from Microsoft not too long ago, and it is really, really significantly advanced. The new model releases you're going to see with, and the whole thing around just misuse of AI.
Totally. And kind of in that vein, Carlos asked a question a little bit ago around, do we think that that context that you have around human beings and who they are and what they do is something that is going to be able to be used to influence um, some of those models to be able to tell is somebody intending harm with this thing that they're doing, or is that still? I mean, that feels like that probably still could be manipulated by bad actors who create fake profiles just for the just in order to try to outsmart those algorithms.
There's that, and then there's just the fact that no tools right now understand nuance because humans don't understand nuance, right? You could say, Erica, you could just use a racial slur right now about me. And that would be a pretty obvious, okay, that's not cool. And you can censor that word. But could you imagine saying some words or phrases or sentences which are just as derogatory but using very polite language? The answer is yes.
Yeah,
How do you tell the difference, right? um, in the words themselves, you can't. There's just is no way to do that, right? I can think of a bunch of things that are misogynistic. I could say, oh, that's not that's man's work, right? That's not an offensive statement, right? Those are not offensive words, but the intent is offensive. The intent is harmful. How do you control that with a model? You can't, because we don't even know that that's offensive. If you have someone who is in this case misogynistic, he still thinks he's right, right? He
yeah.
doesn't think he's doing anything wrong, and therefore if you have social network, you have contest this claim. It's like, well, I didn't say anything wrong. And so this is where we run into a lot of these issues, particularly for any technology which is multicultural, right? So what is offensive to you and I in the United States of America is not what is offensive in, say, Iran, right? And what is offensive in Iran is not offensive here, and vice versa, or in South Korea, or in Bangladesh, or in Denmark. And we're talking about building these language models that are trying to be these universal things. There's nothing universal about human beings, right? We can't even get people in the same town to agree on, where the dog park should be. That's a relatively non-controversial thing, and yet people are calling each other. There's all sorts of crazy things and yell about what color hat they wear and things. And it's like, okay, guys, it's a dog park. If we
And
can't
then they
agree
always
on
bring
that,
it back to the feral cat somehow. Yes.
exactly,
Even if it starts out being about the dog park.
exactly, and so because there is no universal human experience, there is no universal way for AI to approach us. In the same way that when it comes to ethics in AI, that's an area of hot discussion that unfortunately has no answers, because human beings don't understand ethics, right? We don't understand, and we have such wildly varying definitions of what is ethical and what is moral, right? Someone who is a certain type of, say, a Christian, some things are very moral to that person and very right to that person. That someone who's Buddhist is like, that ain't cool, right? Who's right?
I mean, and our
And the
Supreme
answer,
Court didn't even have an ethics policy, and we didn't know that we needed one until this year.
exactly. So you have all these things. The really important thing to remember with AI is that AI is a mirror of humanity, is created from reams and reams of text, and as a result, because it's a mirror of humanity, it is a mirror of all that is good and bad about us, and the questions that we can't answer about ourselves, the machines can't answer either.
Yeah. Well, what do you think we can realistically try to be doing? Like, I mean, I think we are obviously most of us who are doing this kind of work are concerned about the ramifications the AI has for the election. But, I think we're also excited about the possibilities AI has for, making our careers more fulfilling, making lives easier. Like there is lots of opportunity there too. So what are your kind of thoughts? Oh, I love that knife.
So this is a tool, right? I can do good things or bad things with this.
That's right. You
Should I
can whittle.
regulate? Right? Should I regulate this thing? Maybe. Should I regulate what I'm allowed to do with it? Yes. Right? If I use this to make dinner, great. If I use this to go kill the neighbor, not great. Um, the same thing is true with artificial intelligence, right? It is a tool. It's not sentient. It's not self-aware. It's not going to be anytime soon. These are tools. If you use a AI to commit fraud, you're still committing fraud. You're just using AI. There are existing
Can't blame it
penalties
on the
for.
AI.
Right. There are existing penalties. There are existing structures for that, that prevent that sort of thing. If you are using AI to deep fake someone's image, or render someone as undressed, that's already illegal. That's already not allowed. It's just that you're using different tools to do it now. So the answer in a lot of cases is fairly and firmly enforce the laws that are already in existence. And if you want to make it about AI, then do it like we do with hate crimes. You just add a bonus penalty. Like, okay, you killed that person, but it was a hate crime, so now you get 20 more years on your sentence for doing it with this reason, but you still get punished for the reason itself. The same thing is true for artificial intelligence. If you misuse it to cause harm, you, the human, are still liable for the harm you created, right? Again, machines are not sentient; they can't do things on their own. And so, for if you're a marketer or a business person thinking, well, how do we regulate the usage of this thing? Regulate the outcomes, right? If people are using AI in your company to do things that are unethical or against your company's values, guess what? You've already got processes in place to handle that, but you have to use them.
And I love, again, Carlos. He's our MVP today. And he's noting, for his highly regulated clients, that AI has been helpful from a legal and compliance standpoint. And having worked for Charles Schwab and created all sorts of regulatory communications, I would have loved to have had an AI in place that could have done that first preliminary sign off instead of being pressured to get a Series 7 and Series 63 or whatever the heck it is. I'm like, I have zero interest in doing that. Isn't there a way we can automate it? And now there is, which is such a better use of time than trying to get on an SVP's, to-do list. They don't have time to be looking at this stuff. So at least, having some of that stuff in place seems like it's a really good move in the right direction, since all of those places were already monitoring everything employees, did anyway, but just with less good tools.
Exactly.
Well, as we're coming up on the end of the hour, I know you're doing a 12 days of Christmas, and I think we're up to day 5 for
Day 6.
AI. Day 6. All right, I haven't seen today's then. I'd
It
love
has
if
not
you
come out yet.
could.
It's still processing in the background because it's 6.5 gigabytes of news headlines.
Ooh, oh my goodness. Can you give us a sneak peek? Or maybe just a little
I
bit of a
would if my
recap.
computer was not melting.
Well, give us a recap of the first 5 days and then tell folks where they can go in order to see the rest of them.
Sure. So you can go to trustinsights.ai/blog. Day 1 was private social media communities, how fast they've grown, particularly Discord. Day 2 was Instagram for brands. Day 3 was Instagram for influencers. Day 4 was conversations globally about ChatGPT. Day 5 was on content republishing and whether content republishing works or not. The answer is yes. And today will be top news stories.
Well, I am pretty excited about that because there's so much going on that it's hard to just kind of keep track of everything, and even to know like who is the reputable, what are who should we be listening to, who is actually putting out worthwhile news. And for my dollar, it's always you. I read your newsletter every time it pops into my email box right next to Ann Hanley's newsletter. I get both of them within hours of each other, and I sit down and I read. And I can't say that of most other newsletters that I get. So thank you so much for all of the time and effort you've been putting into this, because this is so important. And I feel like you've made the conversation around AI a lot richer and just made it a lot more accessible to a lot of people. So thank you so much for that. And tell us, in addition to you have a new course coming out. Where are some of the places you're going to be speaking in the coming year, so people who are planning their conference schedule, because I know you're already signed up for a few things.
I am. So I'm going to be in Social Media Marketing World in February. I will be at the Marketing AI Conference in Cleveland in September. I will be at the Australian Food and Grocery Council meeting in May in Melbourne. And there's probably about 3 more events. We're just working on the paperwork and stuff right now. I'm doing some stuff with Marketing Profs. I'll almost certainly be at Marketing Profs B2B Forum as always. And things. So it's going to be a pretty wild year in terms of everything going on with AI. But yeah, the course is coming out in 2 days. I'm very excited about it because I feel of all the courses I've built, I feel like it's the one that makes me the most happy because I think it'll be the biggest benefit to people. It's not for people like me. Like if I was the customer, I would not take this course. I'd be like, no, it's too simple. Like where's the section of retrieval augmented generation? Like how do I where's the thing, article in ChromaDB? It's not in here. It sucks. But I am not the customer.
Exactly. And I have one bonus question, because we did get a comment that came in from Twitter And I know this was something that Carlos had been thinking about too. So Wayne Hendry, a longtime friend of Content Chat from our Twitter days, said, as a former diplomat, I think we need human diplomats who know how to use AI to better represent and serve the people they represent. So I would love to kind of wrap up our conversation on that note. Does AI have the opportunity to make us be better world citizens and to, finally have the ability to kind of maybe not have that melting pot, but at least, make a gumbo that is representative of the wider people, not just the loudest voices.
It does. I think one of the more interesting opportunities for AI, particularly with tools like ChatGPT's advanced data analysis, for example, is that it puts citizen analyst tools in the hands of the citizenry, right? So imagine this. You subpoena under the Freedom of Information Act your local city's budget, right? Say, I want the city's budget. And then you put it into ChatGPT and say, find interesting anomalies, line item anomalies that wouldn't normally be in a citywide budget. And it says, hey, here's this thing, this thing, this thing. You're like, I think in the right hands and with the right intent, these tools could be very useful for auditing the governments we have, for auditing the representatives we elect, if you think about it, do you really want to listen to every speech that your elected representative makes? Probably not. Are they going to be
Definitely
posted on
not.
YouTube? Maybe. Could you use AI to download, transcribe, and then highlight any unusual things that person said? Absolutely. So I think if citizens are serious about it, these tools can be used to hold the governments that we elect more accountable for the behavior, and to make it easier to spot misbehavior and call attention to it. We've seen this already. These lovely devices have done wonders for things like changing how we do policing. Right, a
Hmm.
police officer who has a malicious intent can't get away with nearly as much anymore because between body cams and citizens, there is more scrutiny of it. And I think these tools will allow us to give us more scrutiny into the other aspects of government, and that's a good thing because it's our government, it's representing us, and we should have greater say in what the government is doing and much greater insight into how it's doing the work that it's doing.
Yeah. And to that end, people who are in government who don't understand AI and aren't able to use it to make sure that they are being consistent and that they're actually doing what they said they're going to do, they are going to end up not being reelected, or they're going to end up being not reassigned. They're not, I think we are going to have that higher level of accountability because it's going to be easier to point out when people aren't doing their job.
Absolutely. There's this one tool that, for example, that uses ChatGPT and a Chrome extension, and it allows someone to pass a job interview they wouldn't pass otherwise because it's transcribing in real time and it's giving suggested answers. I could see that being repurposed for good, right? Being, here's your elected representative, as they're on the podium talking, the machine be saying, hey, if this line in your script is problematic. Probably don't say, oh, that question that was just asked by the audience. Here's how to properly answer that question. That, especially for newer politicians, I could see that being useful, to saying like, hey, what you just said was insensitive. You should probably apologize immediately for it. Now,
Yeah,
whether the politician takes that into account or not, that's different. But at least the software is there to say, you probably shouldn't have said that.
exactly. And I think we all could use that little bit of help. Well,
Yes.
thank you so much for spending the hour with us. This has been awesome, and I hope that you have inspired folks to spend some time with the model of their choice, and check out Bing if they haven't been over there recently, because there's a lot of opportunity for us to figure out how to never again be in Excel hell with Microsoft's help, and that to me is a glorious thing. Now, if only they could figure out how to fix SharePoint.
Thank you for having me.
Take care.